I never thought my own mother could be so cruel until that moment. We were all gathered around the table at my nephew Tyler's birthday party when it happened. Mom moved from person to person, serving slices of chocolate cake with blue frosting. She gave pieces to my brother Scott, his wife, their kids, my uncles, aunts, cousins, and even the neighbors. Then she reached Emma, my 8-year-old daughter, and deliberately skipped her, moving to the next person. When Emma looked up confused, my mother stared coldly at her and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "She shouldn't be here." Emma's face crumpled as tears streamed down her cheeks. I felt physical pain in my chest, seeing my child rejected by her own grandmother. I quietly took her hand and left. That drive home from the birthday party was the longest 30 minutes of my life. Emma sobbed quietly in the back seat, and every sound tore at my heart. I kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror, struggling to find the right words. What could I possibly say to explain why her grandmother had just humiliated her in front of our entire family? "Daddy, why does Grandma hate me?" she finally asked. Her voice so small, it was barely audible. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles turning white. "I'm Luke Peterson, 34 years old, and for the past 3 years, I've been a single father to Emma, after my wife Jenna died from breast cancer." Despite everything life had thrown at us, I'd never felt as helpless as I did in that moment. "She doesn't hate you, sweetie," I lied. "Grandma just. She's having a hard time right now." But the truth was more complicated. My relationship with my mother, Grace, had always been strained, though I'd spent years trying to pretend otherwise. In our family of 4, my brother Scott had always been her undisputed favorite. Even as kids, the difference in how she treated us was obvious. Scott got the bigger bedroom, newer clothes, more attention. When he won his soccer games, Mom threw parties. When I made honor roll, she barely acknowledged it. Our dad tried to compensate by spending extra time with me, teaching me to fish, helping with science projects, and having our special Saturday morning pancake tradition. But after he died from a heart attack when I was in college, the family dynamic shifted even further. Scott and I had maintained a decent relationship despite our mother's obvious favoritism. We were competitive as kids, but there was a genuine brotherly bond there. He went into finance while I pursued architecture, and we'd meet for beers every couple weeks to catch up. That changed when I met Jenna. From the first time I brought Jenna home to meet my family, my mother made her feelings clear. Grace Peterson, now 67, had never considered Jenna good enough for reasons she never fully articulated. Jenna was kind, intelligent, worked as a pediatric nurse, and had the most infectious laugh I'd ever heard. But no matter what she did, my mother found fault. Too outspoken. Not from a good family. Inappropriate jokes. Her clothes were too casual or too formal, depending on Mom's mood that day. When we announced our engagement, my mother's response was a tight smile and, "Are you sure about this?" Scott, to his credit, welcomed Jenna warmly, but our mother's persistent coldness created tension that affected all our family gatherings. After Jenna was diagnosed with cancer, I foolishly thought my mother might soften. Instead, she became even more distant, rarely visiting or offering help as Jenna went through treatment. When Jenna died, leaving me alone with our 4-year-old daughter, Mom attended the funeral but remained stoic and left early. Since then, her behavior toward Emma had slowly worsened. At first, it was subtle. Fewer gifts than she gave Tyler. Forgetting to call on Emma's birthday. Always finding reasons why Emma couldn't visit for sleepovers, like her cousins did. I kept making excuses, believing that maintaining family connections was important for Emma, who had already lost her mother. I thought if I just tried harder, my mother would eventually accept her granddaughter. The birthday invitation had come as a surprise. Mom had organized the whole thing for Tyler's 7th birthday, and specifically mentioned that Emma was invited too. I'd seen it as a potential turning point, a chance for reconciliation. The night before the party, while looking for a photo to show Emma of her mother at a similar age, I discovered something disturbing. An old family photo album that used to contain dozens of pictures with Jenna had been altered. Pages were missing, and in group photos, Jenna's face had been carefully cut out. It sent a chill down my spine, but I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe the photos had been removed for some innocent reason. I closed the album and went to bed, pushing away the uneasiness. I should have listened to that warning. I should have protected Emma from what happened next. The morning of Tyler's birthday, Emma woke up excited. She spent extra time picking out her outfit, a purple dress with little yellow flowers that Jenna had bought her before she died. Emma had outgrown it slightly, but she insisted on wearing it, along with the butterfly hair clips her mother had loved. "Do you think Grandma will like my dress?" Emma asked as she twirled in front of the mirror. "She'll love it," I assured her, ignoring the knot in my stomach. We stopped to buy Tyler a special gift, a remote control car that Emma had helped select because Tyler loves things that go fast, Daddy. She'd even made a card herself, practicing her handwriting carefully to write, "Happy Birthday, Tyler," surrounded by colorful balloons. When we arrived at my mother's suburban home with its perfectly manicured lawn and immaculate interior, Scott greeted us warmly. His wife Amanda gave Emma a genuine hug, which surprised me given the growing distance between our families. "You look beautiful, Emma," Amanda said, admiring the dress. "Those butterfly clips are fantastic." My mother, however, barely acknowledged our arrival. She brushed past us to fuss over the decorations. Her lipstick, a perfect red line that didn't move when she spoke. "Luke, you're late," she said, though we were actually 5 minutes early. She didn't look at Emma at all. The party progressed awkwardly. Tyler and his friends ran around the backyard while the adults gathered in small groups chatting. Emma tried to join the other children, but they were all Tyler's friends from school who didn't know her well. I watched as she made several attempts to participate before retreating to sit alone on the porch steps. I brought her a plate of snacks and sat with her for a while, but eventually got pulled into a conversation with Uncle Ron about a renovation project. From across the yard, I kept an eye on Emma, who had moved to pet my mother's cat, Whiskers. At least the cat was showing her some affection. When it came time for cake, everyone gathered around the dining room table. Tyler stood proudly next to a blue and white spaceship cake with 7 candles. We sang happy birthday, and my mother began cutting and serving slices to everyone. The moment she deliberately skipped Emma, the room fell silent. I saw the hurt bloom in my daughter's eyes, followed by confusion, then tears. My mother's cold statement, "She shouldn't be here," echoed in the suddenly quiet room. I felt something snap inside me, not in a violent way, but like the final thread of obligation breaking. Without a word, I took Emma's hand, grabbed our jackets, and walked out, ignoring the murmurs behind us. As I was buckling Emma into her booster seat, Scott ran out to the driveway. "Luke, wait," he called, slightly out of breath. "What Mom did in there, it wasn't right." "You think?" My voice came out harsher than I intended. Scott looked back at the house, then leaned in closer to my car window. "There's something you need to know. Mom's been saying things about Jenna." "What things?" He glanced around nervously. "She's been telling people that before Jenna died, she and I were having an affair." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "It's not true, Luke. I swear to you. I would never. Jenna would never. But Mom's convinced herself it happened. She's been telling everyone that's why you and I grew apart, and that's why she can't stand to look at Emma, because she supposedly reminds her of Jenna's betrayal." I gripped the car door so hard I thought it might bend. "How long has she been saying this?" "Months. I tried to shut it down, but you know how she is. People are starting to believe her." He looked genuinely distressed. "I should have told you sooner." I looked back at Emma, who was wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her purple dress. "We'll talk about this later," I said to Scott. "Right now, I need to get my daughter home." As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror once more. My mother stood in the doorway of her house, arms crossed, watching us leave, with an expression I couldn't quite read. But for the first time, I wasn't concerned about what she was thinking. All that mattered was the little girl in the back seat, whose world had just been shattered by someone who should have loved her unconditionally. That night, after Emma had finally fallen asleep in my bed because she was too upset to sleep alone, I sat in the living room, staring at old photos of Jenna. The accusation my mother had invented was so outrageous it made me physically sick. Jenna and Scott had barely known each other beyond family gatherings. The idea of them having an affair was not just false, but insulting to Jenna's memory. More disturbing was that my mother had manufactured this lie and spread it throughout our family and social circle. How many people now looked at Emma and saw her not as an innocent child who'd lost her mother, but as some sort of symbol of betrayal? The next morning, Emma was unusually quiet at breakfast. She pushed her cereal around the bowl without eating much. "Daddy," she said finally, "is it true what Grandma says about me being bad?" I nearly choked on my coffee. "What? No, absolutely not. What did Grandma say to you?" Emma looked down at her bowl. "She told me last Christmas that I have bad blood from Mommy. And when you went to get the car last month and left me with her for a few minutes, she said I shouldn't call her Grandma because we're not really family." I felt a surge of anger so intense my hands started shaking. "Emma, why didn't you tell me this before?" She shrugged her small shoulders. "I didn't want to cause trouble, and I thought maybe if I was extra good, she would like me." I moved around the table and pulled her into a tight hug, fighting back tears. My 8-year-old daughter had been carrying this burden alone, trying to win the approval of someone who had decided to hate her based on a lie. "Listen to me," I said, looking directly into her eyes. Jenna's eyes. "You are perfect exactly as you are. You are kind and smart and so loved. Grandma is the one with the problem, not you. You did nothing wrong." As Emma got ready for school, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Luke, you need to apologize for embarrassing me yesterday," she said without preamble. "Apologize? You humiliated my daughter in front of everyone, and you're asking me to apologize. That child has caused enough problems in this family," she snapped. "I've been patient, but I'm done pretending everything is normal." "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "Emma is my daughter, your granddaughter. She's an innocent child who just wants your love. She's a reminder of what Jenna did to this family." "Jenna didn't do anything. This affair you've invented, it never happened. Scott already confessed everything to me," she said confidently. "That's a lie and you know it." I took a deep breath. "Mom, you need to stop spreading these rumors and apologize to Emma, or we're done." There was a long pause. "Please," she said, her voice suddenly softer, "don't do this. Don't break up the family over her." "You already did that," I said, and hung up. Over the next few weeks, the situation deteriorated further. Emma started having nightmares and became anxious about going to school. One afternoon, I got a call from her teacher, Mrs. Larson, asking if everything was okay at home. "Emma seems withdrawn lately," she explained. During family tree project discussions, she became upset and asked to leave the classroom. I scheduled an appointment with a child psychologist, Dr. Patel, who after several sessions expressed concern about the emotional impact of the family situation on Emma. "Children often internalize rejection, especially from family members," she explained. "Emma is blaming herself for your mother's behavior." Meanwhile, I discovered through my cousin Diane that my mother had escalated her campaign against us. She was now suggesting to family members that I was an unfit parent, emotionally unstable after Jenna's death. When I confronted Scott about this, he seemed uncomfortable but wouldn't directly contradict our mother. "She's convinced herself these things are true," he said lamely. "You know how she gets fixated on something." Then came the most disturbing news. My Aunt Carol, who had always been kind to me, called one evening after having too many glasses of wine at dinner. "I shouldn't be telling you this," she slurred slightly, "but Grace has been talking to Scott and Amanda about seeking partial custody of Emma. She's saying you're not stable and that Emma needs a proper family environment." "That's ridiculous," I said. "Scott would never do that." "Luke, honey, I don't think Scott is driving this, but he's not exactly standing in your mother's way either. She's been putting a lot of pressure on them, and you know she has the money for lawyers." After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. The thought of potentially losing Emma made me feel physically ill. I had always known my mother was manipulative and played favorites, but this level of malice was something I couldn't have imagined. That night, I made a decision. It was time to find out why my mother hated Jenna so intensely. What was really behind all this? Because this fabricated affair story seemed like a convenient excuse for a hatred that had existed from the beginning. And I needed to understand what I was up against if I was going to protect my daughter. The next day, my mother called again, this time to demand that I bring Emma to Sunday dinner to smooth things over. When I refused, saying we needed space after what happened, her tone changed dramatically. "If you keep cutting Emma off from her family, "You're only proving how selfish you are," she said. "I'm trying to help that child have normalcy in her life. By telling her she has bad blood? By saying she's not really family? That's your idea of helping?" A lengthy silence followed. "She told you that?" My mother sounded genuinely surprised that her words had been repeated. "Yes, she told me everything. And it stops now. You've always been dramatic, Luke, just like your father. I'm only trying to protect this family." "From what? An 8-year-old girl? You'll regret taking this stance," she said coldly. "I tried to be reasonable. But if you force my hand, I will take action." The threat lingered in my mind as I began my investigation into why my mother hated Jenna so intensely. I started by reaching out to Jenna's best friend, Allison, whom I hadn't seen much since the funeral. We met at a coffee shop downtown while Emma was at school. "I've been wondering when you'd call," Allison said, stirring her latte. "Jenna worried about your mother's influence, especially as her health declined." "What do you mean?" Allison looked uncomfortable. "Jenna made me promise not to tell you unless it became necessary. She didn't want to create more conflict when you were already dealing with her illness." "Tell me what?" "Your mother came to see Jenna in the hospital during one of her chemo sessions when you had stepped out. She told Jenna that her sickness was punishment for breaking up your family, and that if she really loved you, she would divorce you before she died so you could find someone worthy of the Peterson name." I felt the blood drain from my face. "She said that to my wife while she was fighting for her life?" Allison nodded. "Jenna told her to leave and never mention it again. She didn't want you to have to choose between your mother and her, especially with Emma to consider." That night, I went through Jenna's old laptop, which I'd kept but rarely used. In her email archives, I found exchanges between her and my mother that confirmed Allison's story and revealed even more. My mother had been sending passive-aggressive and sometimes overtly hostile messages to Jenna for years. In one particularly vicious email sent just 2 weeks after Jenna's diagnosis, my mother had written, "I've always known you weren't good enough for my son. Perhaps this is an opportunity for Luke to find someone who can give him a complete family instead of burdening him with your illness and a child who will never truly be part of the Peterson legacy." I felt physically sick reading the words. Jenna had never shown me these messages, had carried this burden alone while battling cancer. My investigation took another turn when I visited my father's old friend, Walter, who had helped with his will. Over a game of chess in his retirement community common room, Walter revealed something that made the pieces fall into place. "Your father wanted to split everything equally between you boys," he said, moving his bishop. "But shortly before he died, your mother convinced him to change the will. Said Scott needed more support since he was starting his business. Your dad was already having heart problems and didn't want to create conflict." "How much more did Scott get?" I asked. Walter looked uncomfortable. "About 70-30 in his favor. Your father thought it would be temporary, that the business would eventually benefit both of you. But Mom made sure that never happened," I finished. Through various conversations with family members and old friends, I pieced together a disturbing pattern. My mother had systematically controlled family resources, using money to maintain power and influence over all of us. The revelation about the will explained how she had the financial means to threaten legal action regarding Emma. My mother had created a narrative where I had always been the family disappointment, and marrying Jenna, who came from a middle-class background with no significant family wealth or connections, was just further proof of my poor judgment in her eyes. The final piece fell into place when I gained access to my mother's financial records through documents my father had left behind. She had been making regular payments to a high-priced law firm for months, the same firm known for handling contentious custody cases. She wasn't just making idle threats. She was actively preparing to try to take Emma away from me. That night, as I sat watching Emma sleep, her small chest rising and falling peacefully, I made a decision. I would no longer try to maintain peace at the cost of my daughter's emotional well-being. It was time for the whole family to know the truth. I scheduled a family meeting at my house for the following weekend, inviting everyone except my mother. It was time to break the cycle of manipulation and lies, even if it meant permanently fracturing what remained of our family. 15 family members gathered in my living room that Saturday afternoon. Scott and Amanda came, along with my Uncle Frank and his wife, 2 aunts, several cousins, and even my mother's sister, Diane, who rarely got involved in family conflicts. Emma was having a playdate at her friend Zoe's house. This conversation wasn't for her ears. I had prepared meticulously, creating a folder for each person containing copies of emails, financial documents, and written accounts from people like Allison, who had witnessed my mother's behavior firsthand. "Thank you for coming," I began, my heart pounding. "I know this is uncomfortable, but what's happening in our family has gone beyond normal disagreements. It's now affecting an innocent child, my daughter." I laid out everything I had discovered: the manipulated will, the cruel emails to Jenna during her cancer treatment, the fabricated affair story, and most seriously, the preparations to seek custody of Emma. As people flipped through the documents, the room grew tense. Some looked shocked, others uncomfortable, and a few seemed unsurprised, as if they'd suspected something like this all along. "Why are you showing us all this?" my cousin Patrick asked. "This is between you and your mom." "Because she's made it about all of us by spreading lies throughout the family," I explained. "And because I need to know who stands where. If she's going to try to take my daughter, I need to know who's with her and who's with us." Scott had been unusually quiet, staring at the floor. Finally, he looked up. "Some of this I knew," he admitted, not meeting my eyes. "Not all of it, but enough that I should have said something sooner." Amanda placed a hand on his arm. "Scott, tell him everything." He took a deep breath. "Before your wedding, Mom came to me with concerns about Jenna. She said she had evidence Jenna was only marrying you for financial security. I didn't believe it, but Mom was so convinced. When I questioned her, she showed me what she claimed were credit reports and background checks, suggesting Jenna was in serious debt." "That wasn't true," I said. "Jenna had student loans, but nothing unusual." "I know that now," Scott said. "But Mom can be persuasive. She suggested I talk to Jenna, see if she'd consider breaking off the engagement for a financial arrangement." The room went completely silent. "Are you saying Mom tried to bribe Jenna to leave me?" Scott nodded. "I approached Jenna very carefully. I didn't offer money directly, just suggested that if financial concerns were a factor in the marriage, the family could help her independently." "And what did Jenna say?" I asked, though I already knew what her response would have been. "She was furious. Told me she loved you more than anything and would marry you if you were flat broke. She threatened to tell you about the conversation, but then decided it would only hurt you to know your family had so little faith in her." My Uncle Frank cleared his throat. "Your mother did something similar when your father wanted to marry her. My parents, your grandparents, had concerns about her intentions. Over time, she isolated your father from the rest of us. History repeating itself, I'm afraid." As the conversation continued, a clear division formed in the room. Most of the younger generation supported me, while some of the older relatives made excuses for my mother's behavior or suggested I was overreacting. My Aunt Diane, who had initially seemed hesitant, finally spoke up. "Grace has always been controlling, but this has gone too far. Using a child as a pawn is unacceptable." We were deep in discussion when the front door opened unexpectedly. My mother walked in, her face a mask of controlled anger. "Having a little meeting behind my back?" she asked, looking around the room. "How disappointing." "Mom, how did you know we were here?" Scott asked. She ignored him, focusing on me. "I came to talk sense into you, Luke. I see you've decided to air family laundry instead." "These aren't private family matters anymore," I said, standing to face her. "Not when you're planning to take legal action against me for custody of my daughter." "I'm doing what's best for Emma," she said, her voice eerily calm. "You're emotionally compromised since Jenna's death. The child needs stability. The only instability in her life comes from your cruelty," I replied. "You've rejected her based on lies you created. You've told her she has bad blood. What kind of grandmother does that?" My mother glanced around the room, apparently realizing that everyone had been presented with evidence of her behavior. Her strategy shifted instantly. "I've only ever wanted what's best for this family," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "Everything I've done has been out of love. If I've made mistakes, it's because I care so deeply." It was the performance I'd seen countless times. My mother playing the misunderstood martyr. Normally, family members would rush to comfort her, to assure her that her intentions were good. This time, several people remained noticeably silent. "If you truly care about this family," I said, "then you'll stop the lies. You'll apologize to Emma and to me, and you'll cancel whatever legal plans you're making. You don't dictate terms to me," she snapped, the vulnerable facade dropping instantly. "I built this family. I've protected it, while you've made one poor decision after another." "Like marrying Jenna?" I asked. "The best decision I ever made? That woman would have ruined you eventually. I was trying to save you from yourself." The room fell silent again at this admission. My mother seemed to realize she'd said too much. "This conversation is over," she said, gathering her purse. "Those of you who understand family loyalty can join me at my house. The rest of you—" She didn't finish the sentence, instead walking out and slamming the door behind her. In the aftermath of her dramatic exit, people began talking all at once. Some made excuses to leave, clearly uncomfortable with the confrontation. Others stayed, expressing support or asking more questions. Scott approached me privately as the gathering broke up. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "I should have stood up to her years ago. About the will, about Jenna, about everything." "Why didn't you?" I asked, the question that had been haunting me for years. He looked away. "It was easier not to, and I benefited from being the favorite. I'm not proud of it." "She's not going to stop, Scott. You know that, right? She'll find ways to punish everyone who didn't side with her today." "I know," he said, "but I'm done being manipulated. Whatever happens next, Amanda and I are with you and Emma." As people left, my Uncle Frank lingered. "Your father would be proud of you," he said, placing a hand on my shoulder. He always worried about Grace's influence over the family. Said she had a gift for twisting situations to her advantage. "I just want to protect my daughter," I said. "Then be prepared," he warned. "Your mother won't back down easily. She's never had to face consequences before, and she won't start now without a fight." The family meeting had accomplished what I'd hoped, bringing the truth into the open and forcing people to take sides. But as I cleaned up the living room alone that evening, I knew this was just the beginning. My mother's threat to take action now seemed more dangerous than ever. The real battle for my daughter's well-being was just beginning. 3 days after the family meeting, a courier delivered an envelope containing legal papers. My mother was formally seeking grandparent visitation rights, the first step toward potentially requesting partial custody. The documents included allegations that I was emotionally unstable, that I was denying Emma a relationship with her extended family out of personal vindictiveness, and that my home environment was potentially detrimental to her development. I sat at my kitchen table reading the papers repeatedly, a cold knot forming in my stomach. The attorney she'd hired, Gerald Hoffman, had a reputation for aggressive family law cases and charging fees that only the wealthy could afford. I would need a lawyer immediately, but my architectural practice had been struggling since I'd reduced my hours to be more available for Emma after Jenna's death. Legal fees would strain my finances to the breaking point. More concerning was the psychological evaluation requested in the filing. If granted, Emma would be interviewed by court-appointed experts, forced to answer questions about our home life and her feelings about her grandmother. After everything she'd already been through, the thought of subjecting her to that felt like another form of abuse. I called the only family law attorney I knew, Melissa Jordan, who had handled my friend's divorce last year. "This is serious, Luke," she said after reviewing the documents. "Your mother has filed an extensive case with significant resources behind it. In most situations, grandparent visitation claims are difficult to win, but with the allegations she's making and the evidence she claims to have, the court will at least hear the case. What evidence could she possibly have? I'm a good father. Anyone who knows us can see that. According to this, she has witnesses willing to testify about concerning behavior, documentation of erratic emotional states, and evidence that you've deliberately alienated Emma from her paternal family. None of it was true, but fighting it would be expensive and traumatic for everyone involved, especially Emma." Over the next few weeks, the legal process moved forward with alarming speed. My mother's financial resources allowed her legal team to push aggressively, while I struggled to respond to each motion with Melissa's help. Emma sensed the tension despite my efforts to shield her. She became increasingly anxious, her nightmares returned, and her teacher reported she was having trouble concentrating at school. When I tried to discuss the situation with Scott, he sounded frustrated but helpless. "I've tried talking to Mom," he said. "She won't listen. She's convinced herself. This is a rescue mission for Emma. Can't you make a statement to the court? Tell them she's fabricated all this? Luke, she's our mother. I can't testify against her in court. Even to protect your niece?" The silence on the other end of the line told me everything. Then came a breakthrough from an unexpected source. Amanda, Scott's wife, reached out to me directly, asking to meet for coffee while Scott was at work. "Scott doesn't know I'm here," she said as we sat in a quiet corner of the cafe. "But I can't stand by anymore. Your mother has taken this too far." Amanda revealed that Grace had been pressuring Scott relentlessly to support her case, using both emotional manipulation and financial leverage. Scott's business had received significant investment from my mother over the years, creating a dependency he found hard to break. "But that's not why I wanted to meet," Amanda continued, sliding a USB drive across the table. "I found these on your mother's computer when I was helping her organize photos last month. I made copies because something felt wrong. That evening, after Emma went to bed, I plugged in the drive. It contained dozens of files, edited photos showing me looking disheveled or angry, taken out of context after Jenna's funeral. Recordings of phone conversations that had been selectively trimmed to make me sound unreasonable, and draft statements for witnesses that appeared to be written entirely by my mother, rather than the people supposedly making the claims. Most disturbing was a folder labeled Court Strategy, containing a detailed plan to gain first visitation rights, then partial custody, with the ultimate goal of having Emma live primarily with Scott and Amanda, while I would have limited visitation rights. I forwarded everything to Melissa, who called me immediately. "This is witness tampering and evidence fabrication," she said. "It completely changes our strategy. The judge needs to see this. Will it be enough? It's a game changer, Luke. But we need to move carefully. Your mother's lawyer will claim the files were obtained illegally. So what do? We need to get depositions from anyone willing to testify about your mother's behavior and manipulation. And we need to file a counter motion immediately requesting that the case be dismissed based on fraudulent evidence." The preliminary court date arrived faster than I expected. Emma stayed with Allison for the day, believing I had a work meeting. The courtroom felt cold and impersonal as I sat beside Melissa, watching my mother enter with her attorney and two people I recognized as friends from her country club, apparently character witnesses. What happened next would determine not just the legal outcome, but the future of our entire family dynamic. During the preliminary hearing, my mother's attorney presented what appeared to be recordings of me making concerning statements about my ability to care for Emma. The judge listened with a neutral expression that gave away nothing. When it was our turn, Melissa calmly presented the USB evidence, explaining how it was discovered and what it contained. She methodically demonstrated how the recordings had been edited, displaying the original files alongside the manipulated versions. The judge's expression shifted from neutral to concerned. "Your Honor," my mother's attorney interjected, "these alleged original recordings could easily have been fabricated by Mr. Peterson. There's no authentication of this evidence." "Actually," Melissa replied, "we have an affidavit from a digital forensic expert confirming the editing timestamps and software used, which match Miss Peterson's personal computer." The judge called for a 15-minute recess. In the hallway, I caught my mother staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, but fear. For perhaps the first time, she was facing a situation she couldn't control. When we returned, the judge spoke directly to my mother. "Miss Peterson, these allegations of evidence manipulation are extremely serious. If proven, they constitute fraud upon the court." My mother straightened her spine and responded with practiced dignity. "Your Honor, I'm an elderly woman concerned about my granddaughter. If there have been any irregularities in the evidence, they were not intentional." The judge wasn't persuaded. "This court takes a very dim view of manipulated evidence, particularly in cases involving children. I'm ordering a full investigation into these materials before proceeding further." It wasn't a complete victory, but it was a crucial first step. Outside the courthouse, My mother approached me directly for the first time in weeks. "You're making a terrible mistake," she said quietly. "I only wanted what's best for Emma." "No, Mom. You wanted control. You always have. But not over Emma, not ever." As she walked away to where her lawyer waited, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. The woman who had shaped so much of my life through manipulation and conditional love was finally facing consequences, but the cost to our family had been enormous. That evening, as I tucked Emma into bed, she asked a question that broke my heart. "Daddy, does Grandma want to take me away from you?" I sat on the edge of her bed, choosing my words carefully. Some adults have different ideas about what's best for children. Grandma has some wrong ideas right now, but you don't need to worry. You and I are a team, and nothing will change that. I promise. As she drifted off to sleep, I made a decision. It was time to take definitive action to end this situation once and for all, not just legally, but emotionally and practically. I needed to establish boundaries that would protect Emma permanently, even if it meant permanently altering our family structure. The next morning, I began implementing a plan that would either heal our family or sever certain connections forever. Either way, Emma's well-being would no longer be sacrificed for the sake of toxic family ties. The judge's decision to investigate the manipulated evidence bought us valuable time. While the legal process unfolded, I focused on gathering additional support for our case. I reached out to Emma's teachers, her pediatrician, our neighbors, and parents of her friends. Anyone who could attest to the healthy, loving environment in our home. Dr. Patel, Emma's psychologist, provided a detailed assessment of the emotional impact my mother's behavior had on Emma, emphasizing that continued exposure to such rejection would likely cause long-term psychological harm. Her professional opinion carried significant weight with the court. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. 3 weeks after the preliminary hearing, Scott called me. "I can't do this anymore, Luke," he said, his voice strained. "I've been trying to stay neutral, to not choose sides, but that's just been another way of enabling Mom." "What changed your mind?" I asked. "Amanda showed me copies of what she found on Mom's computer. I confronted Mom about it, and instead of denying it, she tried to justify everything. Said she was doing what was necessary to save Emma from you." He paused. "And then she asked me if I'd be willing to take custody of Emma. She had it all planned out. You'd be painted as unstable, I'd get temporary custody, and then she'd essentially raise Emma while Amanda and I worked." "And what did you say?" "I told her no, that it was wrong, that Emma belongs with you." His voice cracked slightly. "She threatened to pull her investment from my business if I didn't cooperate. 20 years of trying to please her, and it came down to that. Do what she wants or she pulls the financial rug out. What are you going to do?" "The right thing, finally. I've submitted an affidavit to the court explaining everything I know about Mom's manipulation, the affair lie, all of it. It might cost me my business, but I'll find a way forward. I can't let her use my niece as a pawn anymore." Scott's statement, combined with the evidence from Amanda and testimonies from family members like Uncle Frank, created a compelling case against my mother's claims. When we returned to court 2 weeks later, the judge had clearly reviewed all materials thoroughly. "Based on the evidence presented," the judge said, looking directly at my mother, "I find that this petition for grandparent visitation rights was filed under false pretenses, with manipulated evidence, and with intent to mislead the court. The petition is dismissed with prejudice." She turned to address me. "Mr. Peterson, the court finds no evidence of any parenting deficiencies. On the contrary, the documentation shows you've provided a stable, nurturing environment for your daughter under difficult circumstances." My mother sat rigidly in her chair as the judge delivered a stern reprimand about the seriousness of evidence manipulation and witness tampering. Her attorney looked increasingly uncomfortable. "Your Honor," my mother interrupted, her voice tighter than usual. "I acted out of concern for my granddaughter. Perhaps my methods were overzealous, but my intentions were good." The judge's expression remained unmoved. "Miss Peterson, the evidence suggests your actions were calculated and deliberate, not merely overzealous. This court takes a very serious view of using the legal system to pursue personal vendettas, particularly when a child's well-being is at stake. You're fortunate that Mr. Peterson has not pressed for criminal charges related to the evidence tampering." Outside the courthouse, my mother approached me one final time. Her perfect composure had finally cracked, showing her age and vulnerability. "Luke, please. Don't cut me out of Emma's life completely. She's all I have left of." She didn't finish the sentence. "All you have left of what, Mom? Dad? You've spent years manipulating the family he loved. Jenna, you treated her terribly when she was alive and slandered her memory after she died." I took a deep breath. "Emma is my daughter, not a possession for you to control or a tool for you to use." "I know I've made mistakes," she said, an admission I'd never heard from her before. "But she's still my granddaughter. If you ever want to have any relationship with Emma, it starts with truth and a genuine apology. Not to me, to her. For the things you said to her. For rejecting her. For making her feel unwelcome in her own family. Until then, we need space and boundaries." I walked away, feeling a weight lifting that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. The burden of seeking approval from someone who had never been capable of giving it unconditionally. The following months brought significant changes to our family dynamic. Scott and Amanda faced financial challenges when my mother withdrew her investment from their business as threatened, but with help from Amanda's parents and a small business loan, they managed to keep it afloat. Our relationship grew stronger as Scott stepped out from under our mother's influence. My mother, faced with the consequences of her actions for perhaps the first time, retreated from family events. Some relatives maintained contact with her, while others kept their distance. I established clear boundaries. She could send cards or gifts to Emma, which I would review first, but direct contact would only be possible after she sought professional help and demonstrated genuine change. 6 months after the court case, Emma's birthday arrived. She wanted a small celebration at our house with just a few friends and family members. Scott and Amanda came, along with Allison and a couple of Emma's school friends. As we sang happy birthday around a purple butterfly cake, Emma's choice, the doorbell rang. It was my mother, standing on the porch, holding a carefully wrapped present. She looked thinner, older, but there was something different in her expression. "I've been seeing a therapist," she said without preamble. "He's helping me understand some things about myself, about why I behave the way I do." She held out the gift. "I found this in the attic. I thought Emma might want to have it." I opened the package carefully. Inside was a handmade quilt that had belonged to my grandmother, preserved in perfect condition. Along with it was a card addressed to Emma. "May I give this to her myself?" my mother asked. "Let me check with Emma first," I said. I went inside and explained who was at the door, giving Emma the choice of whether to see her grandmother. To my surprise, she nodded. "It's okay, Daddy. I want to talk to her." I stayed close as my mother knelt down to Emma's level, something I'd never seen her do before, and handed her the card. Emma read it silently, then looked up. "Did you really make a mistake?" "The card says you made a mistake." "I made many mistakes," my mother replied, her voice uncharacteristically humble. "The biggest was not appreciating what a wonderful granddaughter I have. I said unkind things that weren't true, and I'm very sorry for hurting you." Emma considered this with the straightforward assessment only children can manage. "Daddy says everyone makes mistakes, but we have to learn from them." "Your daddy is very wise," my mother said, glancing up at me. "I'm trying to learn, even though it's harder when you're old like me." Emma accepted the quilt, running her small hands over the intricate stitching. "Thank you. It's pretty. It was made by my mother, your great-grandmother. I should have given it to you long ago." That brief exchange marked the beginning of a careful, supervised reconciliation. My mother continued her therapy, gradually showing signs of genuine change. Our relationship would never be what I had once hoped for, but we established a new dynamic based on clear boundaries and accountability rather than manipulation and control. Scott and I rebuilt our brotherly bond, stronger than it had been since childhood. He became the uncle Emma deserved, present, supportive, and fiercely protective. Amanda, too, became an important figure in Emma's life, often taking her shopping or to women's soccer games they both enjoyed. On the 1-year anniversary of Jenna's death, Emma asked if we could visit the cemetery together. We brought flowers, yellow daisies that had been Jenna's favorite, and placed them by the simple headstone. "Do you think Mom can see us?" Emma asked, looking up at the clear blue sky. "I believe she's always watching over you," I said. "And she'd be so proud of how brave and kind you are." Emma reached for my hand. "Dad, I think Mom would be proud of you too, for taking care of me, for standing up to Grandma when she was being mean. Tears filled my eyes as I squeezed her small hand. Thank you for saying that, sweetie. Can we get ice cream now? She asked with the remarkable resilience of childhood. Mom would want us to have ice cream. I laughed through my tears. She absolutely would. As we walked back to the car hand in hand, I reflected on the journey we'd been through. The pain and betrayal had been real, but so was the healing. By standing firm in protection of my daughter, I had not only preserved our little family, but had also broken a cycle of manipulation that might otherwise have continued for another generation. I looked down at Emma, skipping slightly beside me, her face tilted toward the sundae. In that moment, I felt Jenna's presence as clearly as if she were walking beside us, her infectious laugh echoing in my memory. We would be okay. More than okay. We would thrive, stronger for having weathered the storm together. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members to protect someone you love? Comment below with your experiences. Sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that bring the most healing. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share to help others who might be facing similar challenges. Thank you for listening to our journey, and I wish you strength and courage in your own family relationships.